Hey there! So it's been a while since I've uploaded a video, but I figured I'd give you guys an update before I go into the discussion of today. You can see I've finally got myself a filter. I did post about it on Instagram. Very happy about that. So basically the water goes in there through a pipe, gets pumped all the way to the filter, and it comes out on that side. And of course I got a net, so now hopefully fish won't be able to jump out anymore and they're protected from kingfishers. I lost a couple of fish early last year due to a kingfisher, and I've got some young koi in here that I don't want the kingfisher to get. My only concern is that open space right there, which is another reason why I'm not filling the water up to the top, because they might jump out that way or they might jump out that way. And it's also a concern as far as birds go, because a bird can sit on that pipe and catch fish that way or sit on that wall. So that's my only concern, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with that. So on to today's discussion. I watched a previous video of mine where I talked about how to keep your fish from dying. And it's good information. I'll leave it in the description down below. And basically I talk about a bunch of different things, but I don't talk about everything. It's incomplete information. So it's still good information, but it's not everything that you should know as to how to prevent your fish from dying. All right? So that's what I'm going to be talking about. All right, so let me just get my notes. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is filtration and water changes. I did talk about this in my previous video, but I've got some more things I want to say about that. All right, first of all, don't even think about buying koi if you don't have a filter. A filter is absolutely essential because it removes things from the water. It removes debris and poop and all that sort of thing, and it filters it through, and you get clean water at the other end. So, you know, because there are people out there who buy a koi and then the fish start dying, but they don't have a filter. Now, a lack of a filter is not correlated to fish dying. I was basically without a filter for an entire year, but my fish, they didn't thrive, but they did survive, and that's because I did regular water changes. Now, why they were without a filter for almost an entire year is because I needed to buy a new filter, didn't have the money for it, had to save up some money, and then I was able to invest in the filter I have now, which I'm very happy about because I was able to save a lot of money here and there. I was able to get the filter secondhand, which was much more inexpensive than if I were to go and buy a new one. Does leak a little bit, but not the end of the world. All right, now I used to not, and the reason why I definitely want to emphasize water changes today is because I used to be that person that was like, I've got a filter, why do I need to do water changes? Doesn't make sense, you know? Then one day, I opened up my bottom drain, and the water that came out reeked. It was like raw sewage, and then it just hit home to me, wow, this is the garbage my fish has been living in. No wonder they're not thriving. But anyway, so do proper water changes. It is absolutely essential. There was a fly on my leg, that's why, and not important to know. And it doesn't want to go away. All right, so absolutely essential is water changes. Now, I mentioned it in the previous video as well, but just once again, don't do a large water change because you're gonna get rid of beneficial bacteria. Do a small water change, only 10%. Once Monday, once on Wednesday, once on Friday. So that in doing so, you would have done a 30% water change every other day, and that keeps your beneficial bacteria from dissipating too much. So that is the way to go. Now, some people don't have the time to do it, so I definitely recommend if you can maybe get your children or a garden boy to do it for you, somebody you can trust, because or maybe do it early morning before you go to work. And as we go on the topic of when you add water to a pond, this is another thing that kills fish that I didn't mention in my previous video, and that's chlorine. Now, if you're on a well like me, absolute blessing, you don't have to worry about a thing. That water is perfectly fine. If you're on municipality water or city water, that's a different story. There's chlorine in it, and that chlorine kills bacteria. It's to make the water sterile, but it's also harmful to the fish. I want to emphasize this point again because back in my younger days, my step-grandfather warned me, listen, there's chlorine in the water, don't add it to your tank. I thought I knew better. I added iron because I never had a problem before, and that is where I fall into a lot of difficulties because, I haven't experienced the problem before, so it's never gonna happen. Very wrong mentality to have. But anyway, and so I filled up the tank, and next morning, fish were floating. They were dead. A couple of fish. And that was because of the chlorine. When you're adding water to your pond, always let it fall into the pond. Never put the hose's head, the outlet, in the water itself, because then the chlorine is not going to dissipate. You also want the water to go through your filter system because that's also going to help aerate it. Now you do get a dechlorinator, but once again that's a chemical. And in vast quantities, that chemical might be harmful to your fish. I had a lady come to me once and called me and said, listen, my fish are dying, I don't know why. And I told her it might be ammonia, but it's very unlikely because the fish were literally placed into the tank at night. During the previous day. So they shouldn't be dying within a couple of hours after getting into the water. So I suspect that either the dechlorinator did not remove enough chlorine or they used too much dechlorinator, and that is what ended up killing the fish. But of course, I don't know, dechlorinator might not kill the fish, it's just a theory that I have, a hypothesis, if you will. All right, another way, so that brings me to the next subject. When fish are sick, do not medicate your whole pond. Do not treat fish that are not sick, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to overdose your fish, and which might kill them in large quantities from medicine. And, the fish end up becoming resistant to that medicine, so that next time you use that medicine, it might not even work. That's why have a quarantine tank. Have a quarantine tank so that if you have a fish that's sick, you can treat them with salt, you can treat them with medicine. But with that being said, go for salt first. If a fish has some sort of issue, go for salt first before you go for medicine. All right, salt is a much more natural solution to treat a fish, and it's much higher, and I would prefer using salt over medicine. All right, unless it's something, for example, like you don't want your eggs to get fungus, then you would use methylene blue. I've used methylene blue as well, no problems with that. But once again, you want to make sure that it's accurately measured to the amount of water that you have, so that you don't overdose your fish and potentially kill them. All right. So a quarantine tank is very important because what happens if you go for salt and you put salt in your main pond is that you're going to harm the plants. And now I've heard it argued both ways. Some people say too much salt will harm beneficial bacteria. Some people say it doesn't harm beneficial bacteria. What's the truth? I don't know. But if there is a chance that my beneficial bacteria could be harmed, I would rather not add salt. Okay? That's another reason why I would not add salt to my main pond. So in a quarantine tank, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can get a kiddie pool that you can erect that costs, between $80 and $90, which is about 1,000 Rand. Very inexpensive. You can keep your sick fish in that, put a filter on, and you can treat the fish that way without adding chemicals and salt to your main pond. And while we're on the subject of salt, don't take the salt as is and add it to your pond water. Because what's going to happen is you're going to harm your fish. You want to dissolve the salt in a bucket of pond water first, and then add that water to the tank. All right? So that the fish doesn't get harmed. All right, now of course this is not just any salt. This is agricultural salt. The same salt that they feed to cattle and that sort of thing, that's the salt you want to use. You don't want to use normal table salt, I believe the term, I'm going to use the wrong word if I say, but don't use table salt. go with the agricultural salt. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about well water because, or as we say in South Africa, a borehole. Absolute blessing. I cannot imagine raising koi without a well water. It is so essential because, for the one thing, it's not, you're on your own water system. You're not on municipality or state water, so it's a much healthier for the fish. And what other people have noticed and what I have noticed, now once again, this is a theory, so how truthful it is, I don't know, but I had to drain my tank, my pond, on a couple of occasions to get at the fish. Because if I tried to catch them with my pond full like this, the fish would just swim away. They're too wily. I can't get them with the net. And so I have to drain out like 80% of my pond water. And I fill it back up again. I never have an ammonia spike. Absolutely never. And I think the reason for this is that because the water is underground, it is standing underground, it already has that beneficial bacteria built up, which you don't have on city water. And, and as I've mentioned, other people have noticed the exact same thing. So that is my little theory. How truthful that is, how close to reality that is, I don't know. That's just what I've personally experienced. And of course, now, so do everything I've mentioned. Be wary of the things to be wary for. And like I say, I basically never use salt. I never use medicine. If a fish does get sick, it's some skin irritation that's very easily treatable. I just put the medicine directly on the wound and it heals up. You don't want to treat your whole pond. And I just don't get diseases. My fish are healthy, and that's because I do proper water changes and I got a good filter system. Now, ideally, what I don't have on my pond is a biological filter. That is normally something you would also need as well. But, and how a biological filter works is that basically it's full of whatever, and it offers a grow bed for beneficial bacteria. And so when the water passes through that filter, the ammonia gets neutralized. But once again, I only had money for a filter and a UV light, did not have the money for a biological filter as well. So, and that was not the most important thing for me. The most important thing was getting a filter back on my pond. So that's basically it. I hope I mentioned everything. Thank you for watching this video, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'm here to help. I've been doing koi for 6-7 years now. I don't have all the answers. Keep that in mind. I'm not all-knowing, but I've been through the trials and tribulations of keeping koi. So ask me. It's a lot simpler. You could go online forums and a lot of people will say a lot of different things, and some maybe half truths or not full truths. So, just be aware of that. You can, because I've already gone and do all the research online, as much as I could find. Of course, I don't know everything. I'm still learning, but I've already walked a long road when it comes to koi care. And so just, instead of having to go through years, because it's years of study that I've put into koi fish. So instead of you going and spending years and years and years to learn what I've learned or make mistakes and learn the hard way, the way I've learned, just ask me. It's much simpler. But anyway, once again, thank you for watching. Until next time.